Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Please delete as appropriate. My name is Mike Wolf, and I'll be your tour guide as we dive into the wonderful world of Lawrence Kohlberg and his theory of moral development. For this lesson, we have three main objectives. The first one is, who is this man, Lawrence Kohlberg, and what and who influenced his theories? Secondly, what is the theory that Kohlberg came up with and why is it important? And later, how can we use this theory in our classrooms? We will begin with a brief overview of who Lawrence Kohlberg was. He was born in 1927 to Alfred Kohlberg and Charlotte Albrecht in New York. His parents separated when he was 4, later divorced when he was 14, which may have influenced his theories and why it is that he thought that there are different stages to moral development. After high school, he was a merchant marine in World War II. After World War II, he helped to smuggle Jewish refugees into Palestine from Romania. At this time, Palestine was controlled by the British and had not yet been turned into Israel, and he was captured by the British, later escaping to Palestine. In 1948, he returned back to the United States, where he attended the University of Chicago, later earning his bachelor's that same year. At this time, you could earn a bachelor's degree by just passing the classes, not necessarily taking all the courses, and he was smart enough that he was able to do this. So he got his bachelor's in less than 1 year. After receiving his bachelor's degree from the University of Chicago, he started working on his doctoral. It took him about 10 years, finishing in 1958, and he got his doctorate from the University of Chicago. After getting his doctorate, he went on to serve in different positions, including Yale University, the Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences, the University of Chicago, and finally Harvard University, which is where he was upon his death. He died in 1987 after a 16-year battle with a parasitic infection. He had an infection in 1971. He went overseas to do some research and got this parasite, which apparently caused intense abdominal pain. And it was so bad that he eventually committed suicide. He did this by walking into Boston Harbor during the winter, and his body was found many weeks later. However, he is best known for his stages of moral development. This was his doctoral thesis, which he continued to work on for the remainder of his career, and is what we're going to dive into next. Kohlberg's stages of moral development were based upon Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development from about 25 years earlier that Kohlberg studied during his doctoral days. This theory was in stark contrast to those at the time of behaviorism and psychoanalysis, which said that the only reason we did right or wrong was because we internalized rules. Kohlberg disagreed with this, and he put that into his stages, which we will now go into. Kohlberg's belief was that ethical behavior was designed by moral reasoning, rather than just a strict adherence to rules, and that we would eventually have an internal locus of morality based upon what we believed and not based necessarily upon what the rules were, what the societal norms were. He developed 6 developmental stages grouped into 3 levels of morality. These are broken down into the 2 stages in the pre-conventional morality, the 2 stages in the conventional morality, and the 2 stages in the post-conventional morality. Each stage is entered through sequentially and cannot be skipped. However, not all individuals will reach all stages. Some will stop at the 4th or 5th stage. Some might get to the 6th stage but may have to regress. Some adults may never get out of the 2nd stage, and we'll go into the different stages at this time. The first level is the pre-conventional level. This is the young child level, although as I mentioned, some adults never get out of this level. This is where individuals are very egocentric in their mindset. They haven't internalized those societal or cultural morals of what is right and wrong, and are mostly concerned with punishment and consequences. This is what we think of when we think of most elementary school children. The first stage in the pre-conventional level is where a child equates the wrongness of an action based on the punishment received. And so the worse that the punishment is, the worse the action must be. So if you are getting a spanking for this action, then therefore that action must be bad. However, if you get your game system taken away for a week, that must be even worse. A child doesn't understand others' perceptions about the morality of an action, because they can only reference their own experiences. This is very true of the youngest children in elementary grade. The second stage in the pre-conventional level is the self-interest stage, the what's in it for me, or the bribery stage. This is where the child thinks only about how that action can affect themselves. They think about what they can get in return, not necessarily the punishment involved, but what benefit is that action to them. So this would be the bribery stage, where a child will take out the trash for an allowance. They will do something good in order to get a piece of candy. This is the what's in it for me stage. They don't really concern themselves with others outside of how it might affect themselves, and they don't really look at how their reputation or relationship is perceived by others, because they don't really care what the others see other than how it affects them. This is going to be elementary school age. However, like I mentioned, some adults never get out of this stage either. The second level is the conventional morality level. This is where most adults reside, as well as adolescents. At this level, the individual has internalized a morality of what is right and wrong, but only as it relates to societal norms and expectations, such as laws and rules. Stage 3, which is the first stage of level 2, is the good intentions stage. This is where the individual will start to utilize the golden rule. If I want to be liked, I should be good. If I'm not liked, I'm not being good. The social role of the individual hasn't been understood yet, but rather they will act based on good intentions and will look for the good intentions of others. They are more forgiving of others because they assume that there are good intentions behind the actions of others, because that is also how they will act. Stage 4, which is the second stage in level 2, is the authority-driven stage. This is where most adults reside, as well as adolescents. This is the stage that recognizes the need for laws and rules and how they maintain a proper society, that we need these controls, we need these laws so that there is not chaos. Less emphasis is placed on approval from others because it is all about following those rules. There's this mindset of, I don't obey the law, then no one will. So therefore, I must obey the law, and in turn, everyone else will as well. It is all about the rules and making sure that society acts the way it's supposed to. The third level in Kohlberg's stages is the post-conventional morality level. This is where individuals begin to see themselves as part of society, but apart from it as well. Internal principles take priority over societal laws and rules. Rules are seen as useful tools, but are not absolute and can be changed as needed. The principles of life, liberty, and justice are of utmost importance. Most of our founding fathers would have been in this third level, as they saw life, liberty, and justice, the well-being of all, and that rules are sometimes meant to be broken, and that you have to have civil disobedience in order to have a good working society, and also to have that internal belief on what is right and wrong. Stage 5, which is the first stage in level 3 of the post-conventional morality, is the social contract stage. This is the idea that society should act in such a way to affect the greatest good for the greatest number of people. This is how most democratic governments are set up, including our own. This is the belief that laws that do not promote the general welfare of society should be changed. Individuals at this stage recognize that all opinions and perspectives should be respected, and that just because the opinion of someone is not what we believe doesn't make that person wrong. It's just that you might disagree with their opinion or disagree on their perspective. The last stage in Kohlberg's stages is stage 6, the second stage of level 3 of the post-conventional morality. This is the universal ethics stage. This is where individuals base their morality on abstract thinking. Very few individuals will ever reach this stage, and of those, very few will remain at this stage, mostly regressing back to stage 5. This is the idea that rules are only appropriate so long as they are based on justice, and unjust laws should be disobeyed. This is the idea of Martin Luther King's civil disobedience, Mahatma Gandhi, etc. A tenet of this stage is to put oneself in another's shoes and understand their reasonings. So you could look at someone else who you completely disagree with, look at how they are coming at their stance with the understanding that they believe their stance is correct, and try to wrap your head around why they are doing what they are doing. Actions are the result of considering what is right and not what could benefit oneself or societal norm. So as I said, very few, if any, individuals reach this stage or remain there. So how can we use Kohlberg's theory in our classroom? It's important to know our students, to know what they are like, who they are, and what stage they might be, so that we can adjust our teaching and adjust our expectations accordingly. If you're teaching young children, we can't expect them to do what's right just because it's right. They haven't reached that level yet. This is something that has to be modeled and taught. Children look to role models to see what is right and wrong so that they can start to understand what is right and wrong to then internalize that for themselves. So they need to know how to do this to move on to the next stage. As teachers, we are in a perfect place to be these models of morality, to understand where these kids are at their stage in life, what they can be expected to do at that stage, and to how to help them to that next stage so that they can hopefully reach stages 5 and 6 later in life. To wrap up this lesson, we learned who Lawrence Kohlberg is and what influenced him in his theories on the stages of moral development. We dived into those stages and looked at how a child will progress from stages 1 through 6, from a child to an adolescent to an adult, and how some adults might stay at one level and some will go on. We then talked about how this theory can be applied in our classroom and how as teachers we can be those role models, those mentors, those people that children can look to see how they can reach that next stage and how we can help them reach that next stage. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. If you have any questions, please ask.